Hello, everyone, and welcome, welcome. I see people are just getting on. We'll give them another minute for people to sign in and get set before we officially start today. Okay, so welcome again, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. This is our monthly Ask the Chairman Anything with Ken Abramowitz. My name is Marcia Steinberg, and I'll be moderating today's event. Today, Ken's topic is national security issues that face the U.S. in 2022, so for next year. And as usual, his presentation will take about 15 to 20 minutes, then we'll go straight into Q&A. And we really encourage everybody, bring your questions. We really want to hear what you have to say. And for those of you that are new to this format, I'm going to go over this one more time. This is how you enter your questions. If you're on an iPad, you click on the question mark at the top right corner of your screen to enter your questions. If you're watching on a computer or a laptop, click on the arrow at the top of the screen and a sliding window will open. Click on the tab marked questions and a box will open where you can enter your question. I will be presenting the questions to Ken when we get to that time, so you can enter them whenever you feel like it. I also want you to take a note of our upcoming events. I'm posting them on the screen now. Our next event is December 19th with Trevor Loudon. All seminars are at 11 a.m. in Boca Raton. So if you're anywhere near Boca, we would love for each and every one of you to come join us and see us there. Also, our next Ask the Chairman Q&A will be on January 13th, which is a Thursday, and that'll be at 4 p.m. And as usual, to start things off, I have an audience poll that you guys can answer. Are you concerned about national security in 2022? Please select one of the following: very much, much, or somewhat. All right, people are chiming in. I'll give you a few more seconds on this. Looking for answers. And it looks like everybody's leaning towards very much. Anyone else? Well, I would say we're at 100% on very much. So there you go. We have a full house on that one. We have one more question for you. What is the key potential battle in 2022? Is it Russia versus Ukraine, China versus Taiwan, or Iran versus Israel? And we're getting responses. We're looking for you to tap that button, pick your answer. Almost everybody's chimed in. Wow, we have 33% for each one. It is extremely evenly distributed. Okay, that was fun. Now moving on. Let's turn this over to Ken. Ken, I'm going to unmute you. Hello, Ken.
Thank you very much, Marcia. Also, the schedule. Did you want to go over the schedule?
Yes, we can go over the schedule. The the in-person schedule this Sunday, December 19th, in Boca Raton. Trevor Loudon, founder of New Zeal Blog. We would love to see you there. And then mark down January 23rd. Then we had a change of date. So if you had marked something in your calendar before, please look at it and make it March 6th. And also the next one is March 27th. All of these are posted at www.cfns.us, which is listed at the top of your screen. So please feel free to visit our website and you can get all this information there again. All right. Now, Ken, you can take it away.
So thank you very much, Marcia. And I welcome everybody. I want to give you a quick update of some of the challenges that I see in 2022. And can everybody see me okay? Marcia, can you see me?
Yes, I can see you fine. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, great. So I just want to give you an update of 2022 and some of the concerns that I have for national security for the next year. First, I just have to go back a few months into time to when we left Afghanistan and the debacle, really, of leaving Afghanistan the way we left Afghanistan. I personally would have stayed in Afghanistan forever, but both political parties made the mistake of not educating the population as to why we're in Afghanistan. And after 20 years, everyone forgot why we're in Afghanistan. And there was essentially no political pressure to stay there. And there was some slight political gain for leaving. So the leaders of the Republican and Democrat Party thought, in reality, everyone forgot about Afghanistan. So there was no advantage in withdrawing. And the population didn't care if we stayed there forever, if that's what the government decided to do. They just didn't want to see a lot of people dead. But the way we left, we essentially left hundreds, if not thousands, of American citizens behind. We left thousands, I hear somewhere between 50 and 100,000 Afghan friends behind. And we left 85 billion or so of equipment behind. So I'm not a historian, but I'll guess in the history of mankind, no company, no country, no power has left a battlefield in such a disgraceful manner. The reason I mention this is because the after effects of Afghanistan will be felt for a long time. So we basically have a situation whereby the friends of America, the allies, do not trust America, and the enemies of America do not fear America. So you have a double problem there. When your friends don't trust you and your enemies don't fear you, it's a bad situation, needless to say. So the exercise I wanted to go through today is to pretend that we're evil, so to speak, and start for the next 15 minutes or so, and plus your quick Q&A, pretend that you're President Putin of Russia or President Xi of China or the Supreme Leader of Iran. What are you thinking? What do you want to accomplish in 2022? What New Year's resolutions, so to speak, do you want to propose? Well, the basic issue here is Russia, China, and Iran all want to take over the world. By the way, in every generation, there's always someone who wants to take over the world. They always fail, because it's too difficult to take over the world. You lose too many soldiers and too much money, but it never stops people from trying to take over the world, so to speak, every generation. We all know from our parents' generation, World War II ended up killing 60 million people because Germany decided to take over the world. They just created huge disaster for themselves, but also huge disaster for a lot of other countries along the way. So, let's spend a few minutes on Russia, then we'll go to China, then we'll go to Iran, and then I'll stop and answer some questions. Now, President Putin wants to take over the world, but he particularly wants the Russian world under his control. And in the eastern half of Ukraine, people speak Russian. And as he's mentioned in his speeches, he feels he has a special responsibility or affinity for Russian speakers, or you could just say it's an excuse for him to take over eastern Ukraine. He certainly doesn't want NATO there, doesn't want America there, doesn't want any missiles there pointed at him. Ukraine is sort of the underbelly of Russia. And he would like certainly the eastern Ukraine to be part of the Russian orbit in terms of economy. And he might be thinking of this as sort of like North Korea, South Korea, an opportunity to basically divide Ukraine up, make it less threatening to him from his point of view, bring in the Russian speakers, and bring in more Christians. Russia's almost 20% Muslim. He might be wanting to improve the Christian mix versus Muslims. And he certainly doesn't want NATO expansion physically or economic, or the EU economic expansion into the Ukraine. So my guess is there's a 65% chance he'll take over eastern Ukraine during this period of time where America is weak and disorganized and poorly managed. And he probably says to himself, look, I can get away with it. And now the US government has publicly said that they will not respond in a military manner. So he knows for sure he can take it over. But the US government has publicly said that it will make it very painful for him. Probably the only thing he's really afraid of, I mean, there's several issues, but let's just say the two issues that he would focus on is if the US could close the Nord Stream gas pipeline from Russia into Germany, which Russia wants very much. America could probably make it difficult for that to open through various sanctions. And the other thing Putin would be afraid of is if the US knocked him out of the banking system, the worldwide banking system, also known as the SWIFT system, whereby monies are passed through and exchanged between traders and countries and people. And so the question is, will he be scared off, so to speak, from those threats? So you could argue it either way, but I'll just guess there's a 65% chance he'll take over eastern Ukraine, 35% chance that he doesn't. He's trying to do it peacefully through bluster and basically get what he wants by simply threatening to take over eastern Ukraine without actually taking over eastern Ukraine. So he prefers to do it through negotiation than through troops. But my guess is a 65% chance he will do that either directly through military means or indirectly through aggressive negotiations. So let's go to China, US-China, in particular relative to the issue of Taiwan. We have the Chinese Olympics coming up. They end in February or so. The question is, will China take over Taiwan in March? Taiwan's only 100 miles away. They're already sending airplanes into Taiwanese airspace, threatening Taiwan. They broke their treaty with Hong Kong and illegally took over Hong Kong about a year ago. They can illegally take over Taiwan. Now the question is similar to what we discussed with Russia. Is China afraid of America stopping them? And would they do it through military might, or would they do it through intimidation? Sort of the same issues we discussed with Russia. But I'll guess somewhat analogous that there's a 65% chance China will take over Taiwan. America's official policy is that we provide weapons to Taiwan so they can defend themselves by themselves, but we're not actually responsible for protecting Taiwan, as opposed to a NATO country where we actually have a legal obligation to protect Germany or France from Italy, from Russia. Here, it's just we have a responsibility to provide weaponry, but not actually protect Taiwan. And President Biden was in a press conference and he says, of course we'll protect Taiwan. And then the next day, his staff said, well, not really, we'll supply them all the weapons they need to protect themselves. So that ambiguity is not good for Taiwan. And China has a golden opportunity to take Taiwan over the next 12 months. And before the midterm elections coming up in November 2022. So I'll guess that there's a 65% chance they'll take over Taiwan. And then let's go to Iran and Israel. Iran right now is racing for nuclear weapons. There's, again, a vacuum in the world. America has the same relationship with Israel as with Taiwan and the Ukraine, which is that we're going to protect them, but they're going to do the protection by themselves. We're only going to supply the weaponry. And here, Iran is more afraid of Israel than China or Russia are afraid of America. And so the question is, will Iran race for a nuclear weapon? Yes. They just can't control themselves. They publicly said they want to take over the world, and they publicly said that they can't take over the world without nuclear weapons. So from their point of view, they have to have nuclear weapons. This is a golden opportunity. They're trying to gain the nuclear weapons by negotiation, by having from their point of view, new and improved Iran deal, also known as the JCPOA. But so far, they backed away from negotiations after being in negotiations. And so I think they just can't control themselves, and they'll go for the nuclear weapons and dare Israel to attack them. And so I'll say that there's somewhat analogous with the other two discussions. There's a 65% chance Iran goes for nukes. Then the question is, how will Israel respond? And Israel has many choices, but basically two choices: blow them up, or actually three choices: blow them up a lot, blow them up a little, or use cyber to damage Iranian infrastructure or the nuclear program. I would imagine Israel will more or less continue doing what it's doing, which is blow up Iranian sites every other day, never make announcements, just things blow up. And they can blow up in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran itself. And so my guess is Israel will be blowing up more things in Iran over the next 6 or 12 months, but it won't develop into a real war. No one really wants a real war. The objective in war nowadays is to get what you want by pretending or threatening or blustering about a real war, but not actually engaging in a real war. And so those are the three trouble spots that I see in 2022. I'm very worried about all three of them, and I'm particularly worried that all three of them take place simultaneously. In other words, as soon as one of the countries goes on the offensive, whichever of the three it is. The other two say, oh, America's, the EU, everyone's distracted by whatever that crisis is. Let me throw my crisis on the table. And so I could see all three of these problems blow up, so to speak, and become a crisis in 2022. So I always love New Year's, and I'm always optimistic. And but I particularly worry about this 2022 year coming up. I would look for. Wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot of strange things. And since we've seen so many strange things in the last year or two, I guess maybe we're better at seeing and not overreacting to strange things. But I would look for very strange 2022 coming up. And so, as they say, we hope for the best and have to prepare for the worst. So I'm sort of going to stop here and see if some people have some questions for me.
All right, so we'd love to hear from everybody. Please enter your questions as you do. They, again, anytime you can just enter them in and I will be glad to give them to Ken. All right, does the US have any national security people that are really interested in the US's national security?
Well, the administration has people in all the jobs, so to speak, that are allotted to the administration. But each of the people they have is very low quality. So I'm not a historian, but I've never seen such a low quality caliber of people in important jobs. That's one issue. Another issue is they do not have a coherent strategy for where they're going and what they're trying to do. So you put it together, there's no great strategy and no tactical thinkers. And the enemies have to know that America is basically run by an incredibly weak and incompetent leadership. And that's the question is, will that invite war? Historically, when you have gaps between bad guys and good guys, it leads to war. And that's what I'm anxious about in 2020-22. What else do you have, Marcia?
Right. Are there any national security personnel that we have control over changing? And if so, who would you change?
Well, after Afghanistan, I would basically change the whole national security team. I would basically look at the top 20 or so people in the State Department, CIA, Department of Homeland Security, and I would. I mean, I'm not the president, but if I were the president and I wanted to save my presidency, I would fire everyone. My national security, the National Security Organization behind me, the NSA, and all the top 5 leaders of each of the various departments, and basically start all over again.
All right, I'd love your comments on the following. I've read over some time of the Bennett's abilities, although I do not have a good grasp of his leadership and decision-making skills. Your comments, please.
Just repeat it again, please.
I've read over some time of N. Bennett's abilities, although I do not have a good grasp of his leadership and decision-making skills. Your comments.
I just didn't get the name of the one person that was cited.
N as the first initial N, Bennett.
Oh, Naftali Bennett in Israel. Yeah, okay. I was trying to think of people in the Biden administration.
Right. So,
Naftali Bennett is you would call him a normal Republican, so to speak. He had his own party, but he would be regarded as somewhat similar to Netanyahu somewhat similar to a Republican in thinking. However, he was so consumed with becoming prime minister that he basically, it's a parliamentary democracy, and in that you need to get 61 votes in order to have the majority in the 120-seat Knesset. And he basically formed the government with the left. In American terms, formed the government full of Democrats, run by him as a prime minister as a Republican. This can't happen in America, but in parliamentary democracies, anything can happen because all the parties have a right to join with each other in any way that they can do through negotiation. So his problem is that the people, he got 5% of the vote, by the way, as a politician. So he was not a very important politician, but he told his followers that he was, again, in American terms, a Republican, and then formed a government with Democrats. So he violated the trust of his voters, and he violated the trust of the Israeli people. So he's half the people regard him as illegitimate, but he is the prime minister. And the key question in national security is, are the enemies afraid of him? And my military friends tell me that he's basically implementing the same strategies as Netanyahu, that the Air Force is still blowing up targets basically every other day, every other night, in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. And that Bennett is more or less implementing the previous Netanyahu strategies, which is fight a nonstop war without escalating it to an official war, keep it beneath the radar screen of the people and of the journalists, but just keep blowing things up. Also, the Israeli National Security Services, called the Shabak, every night arrest 2 to 7 bad guys in Israel. They surround their house at 3 o'clock at night and tell the bad guy to come out, or they're going to come in. They try not to kill the bad guys. As a military friend of mine said to me, dead terrorists do not give us a lot of information. And so Bennett's continuing the policy of Netanyahu, of basically arresting in round numbers 5 bad guys every other night forever, in a continuous attempt to capture the terrorists before they kill people, as opposed to in America, where we wait till they kill people and then arrest them. So I would say, if on a scale of 0 to 10, if Netanyahu was an 8 in terms of his scariness, so to speak, to the enemies, Bennett would be a 6 or 7, but he'd be in the ballpark because he's by and large maintaining the Netanyahu policies.
Ken,
What else
do
do you have, Marcia?
Slide that, do you want me to post the slide?
Okay, yeah. We didn't go through one of the slides. I had one slide to show.
All right, putting it up now. Oh boy. One moment, please. There we go.
Yes, I wanted to show you one slide. Basically, everything that's wrong in the world is on this slide. And we're color-coded. We're yellow for what I call rational centrists. And we believe in the rule of law, Constitution, Bill of Rights, the Bible. So both the secular law, the religious law, you put it together, and we're yellow for the sunlight of democracy, sunlight of Western civilization. But we're color-coded, surrounded by 4 false narratives. There's the reds. I call it big government, but you can also call it communist. And so when I was discussing Russia and China, they would be in the red category. The greens are political Islam, Iran, would be the leading political Islamist country. And the UN wasn't, the blues wasn't much of our discussion today, but that's the globalists. And that would include corporations like Facebook, Twitter, that are managing themselves not as American companies, but as worldwide companies. But the blues were not relevant for our discussion today. And then we have the whites, the isolationists, color-coded white for the surrender flag. These are normal people. They're not evil. They're just sitting in their houses, trying to make a living, trying to pay their bills, trying to grow the children. And when you talk to them about these big issues that we're discussing, they say, I don't want to hear about it. Afghanistan, Taiwan, Israel, I don't know, and I don't care. Leave me alone. And so they weren't part of our discussion today. So basically today we were discussing the reds and the greens, the reds through China and Russia, the greens through Iran, creating chaos in 2022 to take advantage of the aftermath of Afghanistan, when America seemed incapable of defending its interests. The question is, which of these three will test America in 2022, or will it be all three of them? So we'll find out when we find out, but I just wanted to alert everybody that's the biggest challenge I see in 2022. Anything else, Marcia?
Yes. How can the U.S. punish or leverage power over Russia if Russia takes over Ukraine? And the same if China takes over Taiwan? What would the consequences be for the U.S. if these takeovers happen?
American prestige would fall another notch if we do nothing or not much. For example, what did we do when China took over Hong Kong? I mean, Trump was president. He was stronger on national security than Biden. Trump said almost nothing about China's illegal takeover of Hong Kong. And then everyone sort of forgot about it. The Chinese didn't forget it. They saw that America's a paper tiger. And then the Islamists saw that America would not save Afghanistan from the Taliban terror organization. And we wouldn't even save our own citizens, our own military personnel, our own equipment, and our Afghan 50 to 100,000 Afghan friends who helped us during the 20 years in Afghanistan. And so basically a big war is inevitable, because when you have voids like this and questions like this, someone's going to test America because they can't stop themselves, and they see a golden opportunity before the midterm elections. So one of those three bad things will happen with, let's say, 95% certainty, and that could lead the other two to jump in and try to accomplish their goals too. So the world is unstable right now because of what America did in Hong Kong, which is nothing, and what America did to save Afghanistan, which is nothing. And when you're the world superpower, you sort of have to show up. When there's a war, you sort of have to show up. So I mean, just for argument's sake, there's things America can do right now to avert a war in each of those three fronts, and it's actually simple, but we don't seem to do it. One is to say to Russia, if you go into the Ukraine, all options are on the table. President Biden publicly said he would not send any military personnel to stop a Russian invasion. You don't announce something like that to an enemy. So I would announce that all elements are on the table, and I would mobilize a whole bunch of troops and move them near Ukraine and let Putin guess as to whether we'll use them or not. for China, I would move an aircraft carrier to China and basically park it at the dock, so to speak, and say to Russia, don't even think about going into Taiwan because we have an aircraft carrier there. And if you blow up our aircraft carrier and kill 6,000 people, I can't even count how many million Chinese people will be dead within 24 hours. And with Israel, I would say to Iran, stop your nuclear program right now. We've had enough of this. We're not going to let the world's #1 terror organization have a nuclear program. The nuclear program's over, or we're going to exclude you from the world, so to speak. We're going to blockade you, and if we have to, we're going to blow up your nuclear sites. We're not going to do that, but I'm just saying, if the country did those 3 things, we wouldn't have any war with Ukraine, Taiwan, or Iran. As you know from life, weakness is provocative. So the administration is actually provoking wars through its weakness.
Going on your premise that they all want to take over the world, how can we get them all to fight with each other and leave the US alone?
Well, people who want to take over the world, they wake up and say, who should I fight today? I mean, that's what they do. So you just want to tell them not to come to you. I mean, think of it, just pretend we're living in a jungle or something, and it's or a prairie, and it's full of lions, or lions, tigers, and bears, as they say in the Wizard of Oz movie. How do you get the lions, tigers, and bears to eat somebody else? Well, you just carry around big guns, very noticeably, and you shoot them every once in a while just to create a lot of noise. And you announce to the lions, tigers, and bears, if you get close to me, I'm going to shoot you. And then every once in a while, you shoot one of them, and they get the message. So, whereas if you walk around without guns and say, and just go to church or synagogue and pray that the lions and tigers and bears eat someone else, you know you're asking for big trouble.
Okay, we've come to the end of our questions. If anybody else has something else they would like to hear about, please enter it now. I think we're at the end, Ken.
Okay, so Marcia, why don't you just show the schedule of events coming up again, please?
Okay, let's put that back on. All right, here's our schedule. One more time, please take a look. And we have our next seminar coming up in person in Boca Raton, December 19th, which is this coming Sunday. So please, it's not too late. We'd love to have you. If you're in town, please come join us. After that, again, 1 in January and then 2 in March. Please take note of the dates. All right.
Okay, thank you very much, Marcia, for your help. And thanks everyone for listening. And we hope to see you either physically in Boca on Sunday or virtually on our next webinar, which we tentatively have scheduled for January 13th at 4 p.m.
Thank you everyone for joining us. See you next time.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.